Hey everybody, TR here, and this week's update's coming to you from Saguaro National Park West.
Open eye, feel the waves cut through me, hypnotized by the sounds of...
Hey everybody, back for another stop here at the Saguaro National Monument. I came out tonight because it is the 3rd of December. We're due for a super moon, also known as a cold moon. And then it looks like we're going to have a really nice sunset tonight because there's a lot of clouds out there where the sun's getting ready to set. We're about, I'd say 15-20 minutes away from the super good light of the sunset. Right now I'm setting up my GoPro to catch the sunset, and I'm shooting that at 1080p, 60 frames a second on a wide field of view setting. So hey everybody, I'm back with part 2 of Who's This Bearded Hippie Nomad that's proposing to talk to me on YouTube. Well, I'm a little stuffed up. The dust has got me today, but we'll get over that. As I promised in the last part, I'm going to tell a couple radio stories, and we're out here at the Saguaro National Monument tonight waiting for the moon to rise. It's due to come up here in another 40 minutes. Well, from this angle, it'll probably be closer to 6:15 or so before we get to see it, maybe 6:20. But that'll be all right. We're going to sit out here and record this beautiful sunset that we're going to get tonight. And I think, as I promised in part 2, I'll tell you a couple of radio stories. Let's go back to Precambrian history. Well, maybe not quite that long ago, but I was raised in eastern Idaho. I got my first radio job at 15. I was infatuated with DJs, wanted to be a DJ, loved the whole idea of playing music and talking to people and all that sort of thing. So I actually was running around with a kid named Mike Montgomery, whose dad was also Mike Montgomery, but everybody knew him as Melody Mike. And he had been on the radio in Idaho Falls for many years. And I was working for him on an overnight shift playing country music of all things on Friday and Saturday nights when I was 16. The radio station was about 7 blocks from home, so it was an easy bike ride or a walk, or if it was too cold, you know, sometimes my parents would step and take me to work, but that didn't happen very often. The way I was raised, we walked to school at 30 below, uphill both ways. Yeah, I know. So I'm thinking this first story I'm going to tell happened in probably 1983, 84, somewhere in there. And I was working for Q99, QP and Q99. QP was a country station, but I was actually working on the Q99, which was they considered it CHR, Contemporary Hit Radio. We played a lot of Madonna and I don't know, I can't remember it all, Michael Bolton, and it was okay, it was fun. And one day, let's see, this would have been the 4th of July parade. The radio station had this van painted up with all the QP colors and everything on it. It was an old Dodge, I think it was a Dodge, but it was one of those vans that had about 20 windows in it. Anyway, so we were doing a live remote with Marv Hepworth sitting on top of the van as we drive through the parade route, and me driving the van. And everything was all good until we got about 1.5 miles into the parade route, and of course, guess what? Yeah, the van overheated. And so we're stuck there. We pull out of the parade, and we can't get it started to save us. So we sit there for about 20 minutes. and Marv's deedling around with the engine, and I heard the station guy, Phil Moon, throwing back to us at the parade. He didn't know we'd broke down, because there were no cell phones in those days. We had something called a Marty, and that was a one-way transmitter that the radio station listened to. And the signal was you always dipped the music twice when you were ready to come to them from a break. So, you know, they dropped the music volume twice. I heard the music dip twice, and so I knew they were coming to us for a report. I jumped up on the roof of the van, and I'm doing a quick report, telling them the sad story about how the QP vans broke down, and we're sitting alongside the road, and lo and behold, Marv gets the van started, and not wanting to stop, he just packs up and hauls off and heads back for the radio station with me on top of the van doing a live remote. I couldn't get him to stop. And so anyway, we got done with the remote, and he's driving probably 25, 30 miles an hour back to the radio station. This van is just burning up, you know. We're just blowing this motor. I mean, there's smoke rolling out of this thing. It was quite the scene. But we get back to the radio station. Of course, that van is toast. And but I made the trip back probably 5 miles to the radio station on top of the van, holding on to the remote gear, the Marty and the microphone and the antenna. Try to keep them from blowing off the van as we haul ass back to the radio station. So the light's pretty nice right now, so I think I'll hurry up and tell story 2, and then I'll be ready to snap some photos, because again, I'm shooting with my Nikon tonight, and I also use that for my primary photographic camera. Also, here's my GoPro setup running a 1080p wide field of view video of the sunset out there. So story number 2 is about maybe 10 or 12 years later, and it would have been in Pocatello, and it was at KMGI in Pocatello, Idaho. I was operations manager for those stations, and we had a ratings book coming up, and we wanted to change formats. We were going to go from a classic rock to an active rock, and basically all that meant is at the time we were going to start playing things like Pearl Jam and Nirvana and some of those artists, in addition to your REO Speedwagons, your Jeff Beck, your Bob Seger, all the sort of standard classic rock artists, but we added on quite a bit of new music, and it was really quite a lot of fun. But we pulled a stunt on this one that, well, it was a funny, amazing stunt, but it sure had some repercussions. What we did is, of course, there was a country station in town, and we just really didn't like the owner very much, and they were just kind of arrogant and kind of self-absorbed, and that was really far from the truth for the people that I worked with. Anyway, we let it slip that we were going to switch formats and go to country. And oh my God, the people started calling, and we set up a deal where they could fax us, and we'd received like 2,000 faxes, all around the concept of save the rock, save the rock. And we blamed it on the suits. Okay, so that was kind of a common thing in radio, is that you blamed the stuff you didn't want to do on the suits, like play commercials and things like that. But anyway, the Save the Rock campaign was off and running, and we had to live with it for about 5 weeks, I think is what it was. Anyway, at one point, somebody brought cowboy boots full of dog crap and left them on the front porch of the radio station for the general manager for the suit. Also, Pocatello is known for producing these huge boulders. I mean, these car-sized boulders that are the result of something called the Portneuf Gap flood, and I guess it must have been, what, 600,000 years ago? Don't quote me on that. The Portneuf Gap, which was holding back the Great Bonneville Lake, broke, and that water flooded out and came down through the Pocatello area and carried along these huge boulders and left them scattered all along the valley down there. Anytime they dug a big building foundation, they would turn up these huge rocks. Well, somebody took one of those huge rocks and dumped it in the front of the radio station and painted on it "Save the Rock." This rock must have weighed 15 tons. The final finale, which was pretty good, was Don Craig locked himself in the studio for the last weekend because, you know, we were going to switch formats at 6 a.m. Monday morning, and he wasn't going to let go, and he was locked in the studio, and he literally spent the whole weekend on the air. He was a mess at the end of it, but so we'll check the time on the moonrise. Oh, it's about 50 minutes away, so I got time to finish this story. But so Don locks himself in the studio for the weekend, plays a lot of good rock and roll. Monday morning, 6 a.m. comes around, and the first thing he plays was like Alice in Chains or something like that. And of course, some people were pretty upset because we'd kind of fooled them, pulled one over on them. But it was an amazing promotion. We got more traction with. We were in the newspapers. We were on the nightly TV show, especially when the Big Rock showed up. That was big news in those days. It was pretty funny because, you know, here's Terrell Matheny, the general manager. We called him FLF, and I'll just leave it at that. But Terrell Matheny, man, I haven't thought about him for a while. He was supposedly, if you're familiar at all with the Howard Stern movie, the program director at WNBC. His name was Kenny. Well, supposedly, quote unquote, Terrell Matheny was his dad. And he kind of came into Idaho and thinking he was going to basically rule the roost, and he got a sad awakening because Idaho radio is pretty close, pretty family, pretty cut and dried the way it runs. And he came in there thinking that he was just going to mix things up, and it really didn't turn out well for him or the station owner. And that's actually what drove me away from radio. Was there for a period of, I guess it must have been 3 years. We were bought and sold, I think it was 3 times. And the third time, the new management came in. They were great people. But I just didn't get along with the general manager, and I was kind of tired of radio at that point anyway. It had been a slog. We had been in financial straits for months and months and months and months and months and months and months, and I was just tired of, you know, always having to think about, gosh, we're going to have to cut this person or, you know, close down this program or whatever the case was. And so it just wasn't fun anymore, and so I actually quit there. I had been working at the Idaho National Laboratory as a design drafter working on remote handling equipment. And in 1988, when Ronald Reagan was elected and decided that we had won the Cold War, they shut down many of the programs at the facility I was working at, which was Naval Reactors Facility. And I took a voluntary buy-off and went back to college at Idaho State in Pocatello. Well, when I finished college and I was still working in radio was the perfect job for a college student because you get 10, 12, 15 minutes of uninterrupted study time. And then there was a lot of that was, this is, the weather tonight's dark, continued mostly dark with widely scattered light in the morning. And I'll shout out to George Carlin on that one for those of you that are going to bust me on stealing that. From Pocatello, I moved up to the Sun Valley area, and that's when I went to work for the engineering company. So there you kind of have sort of the last bits of, you know, getting us to present day. Right now, I'm just out enjoying myself. My plan is to continue to travel the USA, take a lot of photos, do as much video work as I possibly can. And then also, I think looking ahead, I'm thinking about maybe going over to the RTR rendezvous over at Quartzsite. That's the rubber tire rendezvous. It's basically a bunch of nomads and boondockers that kind of all get together over at Quartzsite. And Quartzsite's pretty popular in the winter anyway for boondocking and whatnot. So the camera quit recording, and I'm not sure where, but the light's getting perfect, so I need to shut this down for now and get some photos of that beautiful sunset you see out there. And then I'll check back in with you after the moon rises. So here we are wrapping this one up in the light of the silvery flashlight. There just wasn't enough light yet to be able to shoot video, but it's all good. So been pretty amazing out here, got some great shots of the moon rising, and it's time to wrap things up and head for home. So that'll do it for this episode. Hope you're liking what you see, and if you are, be sure and give me that thumbs up. I always appreciate that. And comments, make your comments. Let me know what you want to see. If you have anything specific you want me to investigate while I'm here in Arizona, I'll try to go see if I can figure it out. With that being said, I think it's time to go. Until we get together again, peace.